The Kawasaki ZZR1400, everyone. Yeah, I think after all the years of featuring this motorcycle on the channel, I think you all know how I feel about it at this point. And there is, and there kind of always has been, this influence of doing things to your bike, doing things on your bike to kind of, I don't know, make it your own or to enhance the experience of the bike itself. But in today's video, I'm going to give you 5 things that I would never do to this motorcycle. So yeah, let's jump on. Gosh, I bet that's a scooter. Let's jump on. Let's go. Alright guys and girls. So these kinds of bikes, motorcycles like the ZZR1400, like the Hayabusa, even cruisers as well, there are lots of different cruiser bikes out there that I'd also apply this same kind of attitude towards, is they don't need to be changed. They are perfectly fine as they are, and in a lot of cases, unfortunately, you find that riders that own motorcycles like these, they end up making changes that just end up ruining the bikes entirely. And honestly, it's so sad to see. I mean, there are a few things that I would do on this motorcycle, which I'll kind of get onto in a bit. But alright, the very first thing that I would never do on the ZZR1400 and motorcycles like it, the very first thing is wheelies. Now, I have actually done a video about this before, where how wheelies are quite difficult to find on this motorcycle, and I actually think that's a good thing. I like to have both of my wheels planted on the ground, especially on a big heavy bike like this. It's scary enough when you've got a middleweight bike and it comes crashing down. Imagine a super heavyweight doing that to a super heavyweight. I mean, yeah, there are some people out there that can do it and enjoy doing wheelies on motorcycles like these, but it's not something that I personally would ever want to do. I don't know, if for some reason it just gives me like that cringy feeling, you know, a really awful cringy feeling. So yeah, I don't know guys, I mean, doing wheelies, the heavier the motorcycle is, the more room there is for error, especially when it comes to ruining the bike. So even if, for example, I don't know, you actually manage to pull off a wheelie and you manage to land it perfectly safe and fine and all that, if you land hard, then you're just going to blow those fork seals and there won't be any coming back from it. Fixing fork seals can be a real pain in the ass from what I've heard and seen, even though it is doable. But yeah, so I wouldn't recommend doing it on big bikes like these, especially on big bikes like these, and yeah, and the like. All right, because you don't need to. All right, you really don't need to. I'm sure that people out there can do clutch ups and things like that on motorcycles like these, but I don't know, man. Unless you really want to, or you're willing to destroy the bike, then, well, if you want to destroy the bike, then fine, I suppose you've got nothing to lose. But maybe if it's an older model, I don't know, maybe if you've got a 2006 or a 2007, something like that, with some mileage on it, and you don't really care about it too much, you didn't pay that much money for it, then yeah, sure, by all means, go for it. But if you've got a fairly new one like this one, this is a 2016 model, I'm not doing that whatsoever. This next one might actually surprise you, because I know a lot of riders, people who are viewers of the channel, a lot of you are going to disagree with me on this one, but I wouldn't take it on longer journeys. Maybe up to a couple of hours, maybe. But anything past a couple of hours, for me, the seating position just gets really uncomfortable. Now, I'm 5'11", just under 6 foot, what's that, 180-ish centimeters or so. And for me, even though the seat is ultra comfy, perhaps one of the most comfy seats I think I've ever been on a motorcycle, you are fairly cramped up with your knees. Your knees are quite close to your elbows. You are leaning forward quite a lot, so there's quite a lot of weight on your wrists. And for me, it's mainly my wrists. My wrists give me quite a lot of jip, so to speak. And yeah, it stops getting fun after a while, especially when you're there for hours and hours on end riding this thing. Ooh, what's that? A Gixxer? Yeah, a Gixxer. Nice. Oh, look, another Gixxer. How sweet is that? 2 Gixxers in a row. Awesome. Both from similar eras, I think, as well. Similar models. Yeah, what was I saying? I mean, if I was going to take this motorcycle on a really long journey, then I would have to have brakes, and probably quite significant brakes, every hour and a half to 2 hours, I think. And that's the thing, guys, you know, I ride this bike a lot. I ride this bike over the weekends, mostly to shoot the videos, of course, and more often than not, I am out here for 3-4 hours shooting. And so, yeah, and that's me getting on and off the bike every once in a while as well to do the intros and things like that. So no, it's not like as if I've never taken this bike on a long journey before. At least I haven't. Not really. I mean, the longest I've been is about a couple of hours, just in a straight line kind of thing, or kind of in a row without taking any breaks. But to be fair, now I'm going to caveat this. To be fair, with a lot of motorcycles, I think this is also the case anyway, that you are going to get tired, you are going to start getting achy, your ass is going to start feeling numb, your knees, your legs, your wrists, your arms are going to start feeling numb, and even with the most comfy motorcycles. So I don't think that this issue is exclusive to this motorcycle. I think with almost any bike, you would have to take breaks anyway. Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily worry about that so much, but it's just something to keep in mind that for me personally, I have been more uncomfortable on this motorcycle over longer rides than others. Now, if we take the ZX2 for example, the ZX2, for me at least, has got a much comfier seating position. But the biggest issue with that is the seat itself. The seat is very hard. So if I was going to go on a longer journey with one of my bikes, it wouldn't be this one, it would be the ZX2, but I'd have to get like some kind of, I don't know, jelly seat or something like that, or replacement seat to go on it, just to make it a little bit more comfortable for my bum. So I know that might come as a bit of a shock to people, because people use these bikes for touring. You know, a lot of people regard these bikes as sport tourers, and there are a lot of people out there that can do touring on motorcycles like these, you know, and fair play to you. There was, when I was looking to buy a Fireblade a few years ago, unfortunately, I really wanted that bike. It was such a sweet bike, but it was just outside my price range, and I couldn't get them down enough to pick it up. But this guy, he took that Fireblade, and it was a 2004 Fireblade, I think, from memory, something like that. And he would take him and his girlfriend or his wife, and he would ride around Scotland once a year on a Fireblade. I thought, wow, that's incredible, mate. I don't know if I could do that personally on a bike like that. But some people can do it. Some people find it very comfortable in that seating position. So this is just me talking from my own experiences on this bike, and I know a lot of you are going to disagree with me. But then again, there are lots of people that want to do tours on this bike so much, and yes, they do feel uncomfortable, that they will modify it as well to make their lives a little bit easier when it comes to touring on this bike. So they will get lower foot pegs, for example, so the knees aren't quite so tucked up against your elbows. They'll get handlebar risers, things like that. They may even get an alternative seat as well, an aftermarket seat. I mean, don't necessarily know why you'd want to get an aftermarket seat, because this seat is absolutely lovely on the ZZR here. But yeah, people out there, they have done mods to this bike to make it more touring friendly. So again, that's another reference point that I got for you. And I'm sure that a lot of ZZR owners that watch these videos, they've done the same thing. They've noticed that it's not quite as comfortable as maybe they would have liked over those longer journeys. So yeah, they end up putting on some mods to make their rides a little bit more comfortable, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and that is totally a valid option as well on this bike. So I think the next one is fairly obvious, and I know sometimes I do kind of cross the line between riding on the road and off-roading, but no, you'd never ever want to off-road this bike. Even on gravelly roads, you know, things like this can be pretty dangerous. I mean, just coming out today, right, I was 5 minutes, not even into a video, 5 minutes of just out on a ride, and I came out of a junction and there was a stone that got caught underneath my front wheel, and I had no idea it was there. I nearly dropped the bike, for God's sake. How ridiculous is that? All from a little pebble, probably about this big. I imagine it was this big, but for a second I lost grip on as I was leaning over, because it was as I was coming out the junction I was leaning over, and yeah, it nearly took the whole damn bike down. And unfortunately, you know, that's just one pebble. If you're not careful on one of these roads, then you may end up finding yourself in a very, very similar situation. So no, don't take this bike anywhere near any roads that are overly rural, and I don't know, nothing that is close to resembling off-roading. All right, I'll say that. So now this, I don't think this will come as a surprise because of the way how these motorcycles are built. But I would never ever do any kind of extreme mods to this bike, such as sticking on a turbo. Now that is in contrast to the Hayabusa, where you see that quite frequently. You see people sticking on turbos on Hayabusas quite a lot, and they'll produce anywhere upwards of 300 wheel horsepower or something ridiculous like that. And so, well, why wouldn't you do it to this bike? And it's all because of the way how the engine has been designed, the way the engine has been built. It's not friendly to mods like that. It can be done, without a doubt. It can be done, but it is going to take more time, and the engine itself isn't as modular, from what I've seen anyway, as the Hayabusa. At least the first and second gen Hayabusas anyway. So that's why people put on turbos on those bikes, but not on these ones. And it's not something that I would do anyway. Just even if I did have a Hayabusa, it's not something I would do personally myself anyway. And it's because you don't need any more horsepower. Simple as that. You do not need it. This thing produces 210 horsepower at the crank as it is. I don't know, so you're probably looking at 180-ish wheel horsepower, something like that, maybe 170. I don't know. I've never taken this bike on a dyno, so I couldn't tell you kind of exactly what the numbers might be. But honestly, there really isn't any need whatsoever to do any kind of mods like that. Now, having said that, one mod that I would love to do on the ZZR here is get it mapped, because I would prefer to have a little bit more torque, a little bit lower down in the rev range. Now, I know that might sound kind of crazy here, because I mean, torque is like that throughout the entire range, but you certainly feel far more torque up in that mid to top end as you would on most motorcycles. But I know that I could get a little bit more torque out of the bottom end within, say, like the first 5,000 RPM, maybe 6,000 RPM, have a little bit more torque. That's just for me personally, and that's something that not everyone, again, is going to necessarily want to do, because this bike stock as standard is sick, to put it bluntly. It's awesome. You really don't need anything done to this motorcycle whatsoever. But again, after riding it for 2.5, 3 years, that's kind of like what I'm feeling right now, is getting it mapped, getting it as power efficient as possible in the terms of getting the most power at a regular rate. And I mean, that's the thing as well, this bike does produce power very linearly as well. It increases the torque gradually as you go through the range. So again, most riders probably don't feel like that's anything necessary, that they don't need to do it, and to be fair, they'd be right. But for me, that is something that I would be curious about, is getting this motorcycle mapped and seeing how it feels afterwards. Because I think there is a little bit more potential, especially when it comes to road riding and things like that. Because you guys know me, I've said it loads of times here on the channel, that most of the fun on street riding is going to be from the start stopping, you know. So from a standing start and then flooring it, that's where you're going to get the most fun. You can't do 100 mile an hour anywhere, not legally at least anyway, at least here in the UK and in Europe, I think, apart from the Autobahn in Germany. So it's not like as if you're going to get any fun out of that, because you're going to be constantly looking over your shoulder thinking, oh my god, is there police behind me, or is there a speed camera around, things like that. So the most fun you're going to have is going to be, unfortunately, at those slower speeds, feeling all of that torque. So for me as a street rider, that's partly why I would want to do that to the ZZR here. So I mean, that is pretty much it in terms of the things that I would never do on the ZZR. I think that's all the points that I made. I mentioned about wheelies, I mentioned about off-roading, I mentioned about long journeys, and I mentioned about not sticking on a turbo. Oh my god, that's 4. There's one more that I'm missing. What the hell is it? Okay, I might have to pull over and check my references quickly to make sure that I haven't actually got 5. I'm sure I do, but yeah. I'll be back with you in a second. See, like, I'm here. I've just stopped, and even though I've been riding for roughly an hour and a half, something like that, my hands are already tingling. Ah, of course. Oh my gosh. How the hell could I forget this, man? Track daying it. The very last thing that I would not do on the ZZR1400 is track day it. And the funny thing is that even though I think we've probably all seen the videos of reviewers and things like that actually taking this bike on a track day, and how surprised they are with how it performs on track, it's still something I would never do. And funnily enough, the wifey, I think it was last year or something like that, that's what she wanted to get for me for my birthday, was a track day on the ZZR. So take a ZZR to a racetrack somewhere in the UK and have a blast around the track. And I said to her, it's not something actually that I would want to do on this bike. It is super heavy. Yeah, so lugging it around a track is going to be just a nightmare at the best of times. And yeah, being able to rev out the bike all the way on a track does sound quite appealing to me. But I wouldn't want to risk it. Again, it kind of goes back to the whole thing like wheelies, you know. I don't think it's worth doing. You can have a lot of fun with this motorcycle under 100 mile an hour. So is there really any point at that going over 100 mile an hour to extract a little bit more enjoyment out of it? I'm not so sure. And track riding is dangerous, guys. Yeah, it is dangerous, or it can be dangerous. So I don't know. And the thing is, guys, I've never been on a track day before either, so there is that. Yeah, so I think it's quite safe to say that getting the ZZR on a track probably isn't the best idea in the world. At least, you know, I prefer to have some track experience on a smaller bike at least. Maybe on a 600 or something like that, because they're plenty quick as it is. So yeah, I think for me that would be the best thing to do first, and then maybe I could reevaluate whether or not it's something that I think would be worth doing on the ZZR. But anyway, guys and gals, I mean, that's pretty much it for the video today. And hey, you guys let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Is there something that I've mentioned in today's video that actually you do quite regularly on the ZZR, and actually you think, no, it's really good for that, like the long journeys and things like that? Yeah, definitely let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, Because again, this is a very versatile motorcycle. You can ride it as a sport bike, you can ride it as a sport tourer, you can pretty much do everything on it apart from, as I mentioned earlier, off-roading. So yeah, there's definitely loads and loads of ways to enjoy this motorcycle for sure. But anyway, guys and gals, as always, leave a like, hit subscribe, and we will catch you all in the next video. Have a good one.